Hello and welcome to today's Quick&R Plan for Success Resource Development Planning. As advertised, we'll have you get a little bit of knowledge and some tools for resource development planning and be back to work in 15 minutes or less. My name is Susan Snozzy and I am National Director of Resource Development Learning Initiatives here at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. It is my pleasure to be talking to you today about resource development planning, so let's go ahead and get started. Imagine, if you will, that I'm leaving for vacation with my family. And since I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's cold here in February, my imaginary vacation is going to take me to sunny California. I pile my family into the car, and my husband says, "Hey, where are we going?" And I say, "California." "Well, how are we going to get there?" What if I was to say, "I'm really not sure. I just thought we'd drive for a while and see what happened." Well, really, in essence, this is what's happening if you are trying to do resource development without a plan. You don't have a roadmap of where you're going. You don't know how you're going to get there. So let's talk a little bit about the resource development plan. Today, our goals are going to be to talk about the importance of resource development planning, to understand how to create a resource development plan, and to put you in touch with the tools that you need to complete your plan. The purpose of a resource development plan is to have agreement and understanding throughout the organization about what will be done to raise philanthropic funds and how to provide proper stewardship of those funds. More simply, though, a resource development plan is going to help you raise money. So let's talk about 8 simple steps to a resource development plan. Here we go. You can find fantastic resource development planning resources, that's a mouthful, if you go to the fundraisingbank.org. If you go to the fundraisingbank.org and you click on the vault, you'll find a section that's called Club RD Webinar Series 2016. There you'll find a recording of this webinar as well as future webinars and a resource that I hope that you will utilize. It's our RD Planning Guide and Worksheets. And this is an Excel file that will automatically make all of the calculations I'm about to share with you that are necessary for an RD plan, and a Word document that will walk you through exactly how to write your resource development plan. It is absolutely turnkey, very, very easy to use. There's also a very important resource available to all of you at Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is your club's Director of Organizational Development. Now, if you're a CEO, you know your DoD well and you talk to them regularly. If you are a resource development staff member, you may have less interaction with your DoD. If you don't know who your Director of Organizational Development is, just ask your CEO and they can tell you. Your Director of Organizational Development can help walk you through how to put together a resource development plan step by step. And I'll have my contact information up at the end of this Quick&R so you can reach out to me if you have any questions too. So step 1 in putting together a resource development plan is digging into your data. Too often we start our RD plan based on what we think we need. Well, I need to raise $300,000 this year, so my plan's going to be to raise $300,000. This is like me driving to California without a map. Instead of saying what we want, we need to know what's possible. This is to prevent us from shooting too low or shooting too high. That way we won't end up at the end of the year saying, well, I thought we could raise $300,000, but we can't, and now we're going to have to cut hours or cut staff or cut services to the children who need us. So start out by digging into data. You'll look first at your gift distribution. That is, how many gifts are you getting at each level of the donor pyramid? What's your donor retention rate? Nationwide, according to Bloomerang, donor retention is 43%. That means that we're losing 57% of our donors every single year. We need to know what our retention rate is so that we know how many gifts we're going to get. Knowing your average gift size also lets you predict what to expect. And the distribution of your sources of revenue. What percentage of your gifts are coming from special events? What percentage are coming from individuals, foundations, and corporations? As you do this analysis, this will start to reveal to you what your strategy should be for the year. Where are you raising money currently, and where could you be raising more money? Increasing your donor retention, for example. Having a direct mail campaign. How can you improve upon those things that you discovered when you were analyzing your situation? So, for example, if you realize that you're heavily dependent on special events, how can you diversify your income? So dig into your data because it's going to help you decide on a good plan. Step 2, you're going to analyze your income and your expenses. Use data over the last 3 years, calculate your net income, project your income and expenses, and draw conclusions. Step 3, calculate your goal. You'll use historical data to guide you. This will help you to determine what's possible and what isn't possible. So if every year in the past you've raised between $50,000 and $75,000 from individuals, you know that this year it's not going to be possible for you to raise $500,000 from individual. So be sure that you're using historical data to tell you what's possible, and make sure that your goals are attainable rather than aspirational. In other words, are these things that I can accomplish? I have someone who says, I can't take notes fast enough. Will the PowerPoint be available? You bet it will be. I'm going to email it to everyone who's on this webinar. You'll also be able to see all of these resources at thefundraisingbank.org. So for now, just sit back, drink your coffee, take it all in, and we'll send you the PowerPoint. As you're working on calculating your goals, include your CEO, your board, and your RD committee. We shouldn't be creating these goals in a vacuum, because then what can happen is the RD team might say we can raise X. The board might say we need Y. We need to get everybody on the same plate so that we aren't over or underestimating. As you're considering income that's possible, be sure too to consider any blips in the past that disturb kind of the trend. For example, did you have a bequest that might make it seem like you have lots of dollars that are coming in? Did you have a one-time gift from a foundation? That might throw your averages off, and you can make adjustments. Also, as you're calculating your goals and your expenses, think about what new changes this year could increase your capacity. Are you going to be in the Advancing Philanthropy Project, which might help you to get more individual gifts? Are you going to have new staff or a really crackerjack new board member that could mean you have a greater capacity? Step 4, you're going to create a roadmap to facilitate growth. What this means is deciding on what your objectives are, what your strategies are, and what your action plan is. So you've done this kind of past income analysis. You're getting an idea of what's possible, and here you're also saying, this is how we're going to measure success, and this is how we're going to get there. So here's an example. My objective is going to be to increase donor retention. I can't stress this enough, so it's a great one to have as one of your strategies. My strategies then will be to thank donors promptly, to make face-to-face visits for major gifts, to make phone calls for significant gifts, so that people are starting to feel their gift is appreciated, which is a key indication that will make them give again. What's my action plan? This is where I will determine what actions are necessary, what's the timeline and the responsibilities, in other words, the who, when, and how. So I might say, these phone calls are going to be made by board members. It will be the responsibility of the staff to provide timely records of gifts and phone numbers for who they need to contact. The board member will make the call. I would have that all laid out in an action plan. And when you download those documents I referenced at the beginning of the webinar, it will also walk you through how to create this roadmap to facilitate growth. So everything that we're talking about here in our webinar is going to be possible using those documents. Next, you want to develop a stewardship plan. Now, this stewardship plan would be for a club that has lots of staff and a really engaged board. There are lots of different examples of things that you could do to steward your donors. But stewardship, or showing appreciation for the gift, showing how the gift is used, showing its impact, should be something you plan on at the beginning of the year rather than an afterthought where we say, oh, we haven't really done anything. Let's quick send them a Happy New Year's card. It should be strategic and systematic. And once that happens, it becomes ingrained throughout the organization. It's easy to do stewardship. So you create your stewardship plan. This is a great template. It will also be in those documents I'm going to send to you. So you have your stewardship moves, for example, a tax letter. And here we say everybody's going to get a tax letter. A thank you letter, everybody 100 and up is going to get a thank you letter. Thank you calls, here's who receives that. Personal visit, here's who receives that. And you can use this really simply to determine how you'll be stewarding your donors. I don't think it would be reasonable to try to do every single one of these things unless you have a dedicated resource development staff. If you are a one-person shop, you've still got your board to help you. So pick out 3 or 4 things on here determine who will get these measures of stewardship and make it part of your plan. Now that you've got stewardship underway, you can summarize your plan. You can summarize what you're hoping to accomplish. You've got your activity, for example, mail appeals, personal solicitations, your steak and burger, your open house, whatever it is. You've got your dollar goal, you've got your goal number of donors, your audience, your strategies, and your timeline. And if you can lay this out for each of your initiatives, this is a nice high-level summary you can share with your board so that they aren't getting kind of mired down in all the really nitty-gritty details that you need to be able to plan well, but they've got a high-level summary of what they need. The next step is to create a calendar. And you can do this using Outlook. You can do this using a Google Calendar. Some clubs do it on a written calendar and then transfer it over. Doesn't really matter what the mechanism is. What matters is that you go ahead and calendar out all of the important things that are going to be happening for the year. Make sure your board and staff are all aware of the things that are in your calendar. So this would include dates for your annual campaign, kickoff, dates for each phase, date for your appeal letter, and phone-a-thon. Having all that worked out ahead of time is really important so that you don't miss things. For example, you wanted to have your appeal letter in the mail the week after Thanksgiving and you didn't get it to the printer because you're kind of just driving to California without a map. Dates for special events, and this should include dates for the mailing, dates for the first committee meeting, dates for the follow-up, press releases, all that kind of stuff. Having it all calendared out ahead of time helps prevent mistakes, but it'll help you sleep at night too, because you won't be constantly sort of laying in bed churning over whether you're forgetting anything. You'll know you aren't, because it's all in your calendar. Due dates for grant applications and reports. There's nothing quite like the feeling when you realize you've missed a grant deadline. So put those in the calendar. You can also note who's responsible for calendar items, and you may or may not wish to include marketing items in your calendar as well. The last step is to track your progress. Any resource development person, any CEO at any time should always be able to tell you their number. This is how much we have to raise this year, and this is the number I have left to go. Keep track of your progress. How much do you have to go toward goal? You can communicate that to your board to let them know how instrumental they've been in getting you to where you are, or in letting them know there's some work yet to be done. Continually track that progress and communicate it out with your leadership. And those are the steps to putting together a resource development plan. Now, if your head is swimming right now, don't worry, because I'll be sending you resources that you need to be able to put your plan together. But remember that your steps were simply digging into data, looking at your past income and expenses, calculating the goal based on what's needed and what's possible, creating a roadmap to facilitate growth. What things are you going to do this year that will help you raise more money? Developing a stewardship plan, summarizing your plan at a high level, creating that calendar, and tracking your progress. Once you've done all of those things in your RD plan, you'll have a simple, easy-to-use document that's going to help you create more impact for kids by raising more money. At this point, we have 1.5 minutes left in our Quick&R. If you have any questions, you can type them in the question box. And I'll also flip to my contact information. I would be very happy to help anyone with their RD plan, with any questions they have. I'd be happy to help connect you with resources and to take feedback, because this is the first of our new Quick&R series. We want to be sure that these are as useful as possible to all of you. So if you can let me know of any changes that would be helpful, that would be fantastic as well. At this point, I'm not seeing any changes. We have had 14 minutes together. That's the end of our Quick&R. Be looking for an email from me in the next 10 minutes. And I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope you plan to succeed.